So there was a moment where I actually got really drunk. I was at a bar, and this guy I know, me and him had got into a fight. And I really don't remember much from that night. I just remember what I felt, how I felt, you know. And we got into a fight, and then I ended up like going home. And when I say this is by far the hardest thing I ever did in my life, because like I just wanted to retaliate, you know, I just wanted to retaliate because when we got in a fight, it was just kind of like, I don't even know why we got in a fight, to be honest, you know, because I was really drunk. Probably my own doing, maybe, I don't know. But we got into a fight, and I was just laying down, and this is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hurt this man, you know? And I don't know, it's kind of crazy to kind of look back on it because everything inside of me wanted revenge. Like when I say everything inside of me wanted revenge. And I actually, like part of me was like that little voice in me was like, hey, you know, don't do it type thing. And it's interesting to kind of like think about it because it was me fighting who I was because I was raised on retaliation. I was raised on like, hey, you don't let anybody do that thing because that's a sign of weakness, right? And so I'm over here fighting with myself, like, Paul, please, you know, like, don't do it, you know? And what made it even harder is my friends and my family got wind of it. So there was my friends who seen it, they was like, oh yeah, Paul gonna retaliate, right? So those was like, whatever, right? But then there was also my friends from the past who got that heard about it, and then my family who heard about it. And they was like, oh yeah, let's go, it's game time, you know? And I was just like, nah, we're gonna, you know, this time I'm kind of like trying to fight myself to not retaliate. And then that pressure from the outside world coming in to retaliate. And then literally like, they was like, listen, just send me his photo and I'll take care of it. And it's crazy just to think about it because there were several times I almost sent that photo, just to be transparent. Like, I literally went to Facebook, got his photo, and put it in a text message, and almost pressed the send button probably 3 or 4 times, you know? And I just had to keep fighting with myself. It was an internal battle with myself because every time I walk in the morning and walk across the mirror, I had a black eye. I'll see it and it'll make me want revenge, you know? So what ended up happening is I just knew I wasn't strong enough to not seek revenge. And every day for maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month, I prayed to God every day. And 2 prayers really. I was like, God, please give me the strength to forgive. The second thing was, God, please get this revenge off my heart. So those was the 2 prayers I did every day. So I didn't retaliate. So I won't retaliate. But eventually, and I didn't leave the house for 4 months. At least 4 months, because I couldn't, I wasn't strong enough. I knew if I seen them, I would hurt them. So all that happened, and probably after 4 months, then it's probably like 8 months, you know, I started to leave the house but not go anywhere too crazy because I still wasn't strong enough. Probably like 8 months later, I finally forgave, and I ended up seeing him, and then he told me his side story. He's like, you know, I was going through a lot, blase, blase, blase. We shook hands, parted as friends, but that was by far the hardest thing I ever did in my life today, was to forgive and not retaliate. And it's quite interesting because now looking back on it, I learned a lot of lessons that day because I broke one of the rules that I learned in my early childhood is not to get caught slipping. But one of the things, and looking back on it, I asked myself a couple of questions and I was like, listen, are you doing this why are you doing it? Like, why do you want revenge? Are you doing it for the outside world? Are you doing it for yourself? And I was like, I really ponder on that question. The first one was like, do you believe he can beat you up? I was like, no. I boxed for 2 years plus my past. It's like, no, for sure not, right? And so if you believe that to your core, why does it matter? It's me talking to myself, right? I was like, I'll definitely just be doing it for the outside world so they can see, I'll definitely be doing it for the outside world so they can see what it is, right? So I was like, it's not even for you, so that's irrelevant. Second thing I realized now looking back on it, it was literally, the reason it was so hard is because I was fighting with who I was to move towards who I wanted to become. And it's interesting because once I forgave, it was really like invisible chains was broke. I was like released, if you will. And it's quite interesting because ever since then, everything started to look up for me in my career, my real estate career, personal life, everything. It's interesting because around that time when all of that happened, I ended up losing everything. And then I had to live on my mom's couch for 3 years. And then fast forwarding, forgive, all that stuff. And started just to execute and hustle. Everything started to look up. I started closing deals more consistently, started to build what I have today. So it's kind of interesting how that all played out. I was selling houses, but it wasn't consistent. But my 4th year in is kind of where everything started to click for me. Because looking back on my life and just kind of looking back on everything, it's information connects together. So I can read a book here, because I actually read, by the way, I read 168 books in this since I was 17 till now, right? And I'm always grow that because knowledge is one of the most important things that we have. I actually give you another little gem that I learned from Jim Rohn. If you read for the sake of reading, it makes you a fool. But if you read for the sake to apply what you read, it makes you wise. So, with that principle, all of these little books I read, I always apply at least one thing, right? Let me just take one thing and apply it to my life. And it's interesting because looking back on it, information connects together. There can be something that I read like 2 years ago, and then I get a piece of information today, and maybe I learned something new the day before, and all 3 of those things make one thing. Like all of those things connect together, and now I understand a concept better, if you will. So information connects together. So either way that happened, and I end up finally catching some traction because of all the information that I've learned, the things I was applying to my life, finally got some traction, and things finally start to click. So I started working with investors, right? The reason I was working with investors because the only reason I got into real estate was to learn and build the connections to invest and buy apartment complexes, right? So that was my target market. And what ended up happening was I got to the point where I didn't even leave the house and I closed deals, right? Like I'll just make a couple phone calls, put some deals together, and because I built so many good connections in my life. Like I have a lot of great connections. And I think, again, if I didn't grow as much as I did, there's no way the caliber of people who I have in my phone, there's no way I would ever have access to these type of people. But it's because I can provide them value. You gotta become more valuable in order to get in those type of circles, if you will. And that's another principle, that I've learned that all those successful people have in common. You gotta provide value to others in order to make money. And if you want to elevate in life, if you will, you gotta have great connections. And you get those connections by becoming valuable to those people. So either way, so I would just basically make some phone calls, get some houses closed. I'll only show them the house once. Like they'll put the deal under contract. I'll go there, I'll go there to show them the house, and then I'll just meet them at the closing table. So that's kind of how my business started to go. And then me trying to take it to the next level. In those early days, I remember about the expansion team. So I started to study that, learn about that. And what I realized was that, with expansion teams, the profit margin is really low. Your best agents leave you to start their own thing. generally, most of the time, really. And it was just really, I seen, it was no really path for freedom, for me at least, because the reason I got into real estate was to learn about investing, to build a real estate portfolio, but also as I learned about that team as the way to kind of build a business within a business, I learned that that's another way for me to have freedom. So I can actually build a team, then basically from the business that I built, take that money and start to buy apartment complexes. So that's actually my path. So for you guys who's out there who's doing real estate, that's a solid plan if you guys is looking for one. But either way, I realized that way, the expansion team model was kind of not really the model that I was looking for, because it couldn't give me freedom in the true sense of the word. And freedom for me is money freedom, time freedom, and location freedom, right? So I have to have all three to be free. So going down further on in my career, I was finally starting to make some good money. And what ended up happening is I ran across one of my mentors, and they told me about a company that basically can provide me what I was looking for, which is freedom. So time freedom, money freedom, and location freedom through building an expansion team. So I kind of studied the business model of eXp Realty, which is the company I'm with currently. And I was like, okay, it basically solved every problem that an expansion team has. I was like, all right, got it. And me, like truly studying business people almost all my life at this point. Ever since I was 17, I studied self-made business people. So there's some principles that must happen in order for you to go on a path to building a company, that should happen, if you will, to make sure the company become highly successful. So it met all those requirements for me, and I was like, okay. So I ended up joining eXp Realty, building an expansion team. So what's interesting about that is within the first 2 years of being with eXp, before the age of 30, I ended up being financially free and actually getting the goal of freedom that I originally came into the real estate industry to obtain, time freedom, money freedom, and location freedom. And I was able to accomplish that within the first 2 years of being with eXp. So I'm going to be forever grateful for eXp Realty because they truly changed my life forever, for sure. They gave me the opportunity to use my skill set, my knowledge, and build a great business on top of their platform. So I'll always be grateful forever for that, for eXp Realty. A little bit about the business. I currently have an expansion team of 173 agents. We're in 11 states, 3 countries. The goal is to launch into 2 more countries in 2023 and counting, 1% better every day. In every area of my life, that's just how I live, right? It's about me getting better and in every area of my life. So being a better businessman, being a better leader, being a better friend, everything, right? For me, it's just, I must get better in every area of my life. So either way, the goal is to launch into 2 more countries by the end of 2023 and continuously grow from there. And to go back to another thing that Jim Rohn, the man really changed the way I see the world, really. And one of the things he stated was, for things to change for you, you must change. And I'll leave that with you today. If you want to change your life, you must change. The outside world don't need a change. You internally need a change. And I get it, the actual reason I put together this little documentary of my life is because most people in the world want to change, but very few people do. And the reason they don't is because it's extremely hard to change. And it may not even be as drastic as changing your entire life around. It could just be like, hey, I want to work out more, or I want to stop going to these places, or I want to stop doing this thing that I know isn't getting me where I want to go. Change is hard, right? So I think, but I also wanted to kind of put this out there just to let you know that change is possible. If you're willing to sacrifice, if you're willing to do what it takes, it's possible. Here's a couple of philosophies of my own that I kind of learned in my life. If you look over my entire life, my whole life is like the elevation of my life was all about perspective. So for me, living in Louisiana to moving to Texas, there was a perspective change, right? Seeing bigger houses, seeing more was out there, right? For me, being a part of the gang and knowing what my goals was, there's a perspective change there. Then me running into Jim Rohn, and then me researching all these self-made successful people who was just like I was, and it was making it was a perspective change for me. You see, I see life as the collection of lenses. And what that means is the reason we read books, the reason we travel the world, the reason we embrace cultures is because we then pick up a new lens to see the world. And the more of these lenses we continue to collect as we learn, right, as we travel, we become wiser, we become more understanding, and in my opinion, we become better human beings. Because what will happen is, when we look at one situation, we can see it from a whole bunch of different angles. And then we can filter and make our decisions based upon seeing it from all of those different angles. So that's kind of how I see life. Never stop learning, never stop improving, never stop growing, because that's ultimately what life is about. It's about progress. You see, the man you see before you today, I built this person over the last 14 years, and I'll continuously to improve on myself, because that's what life is about. Life is about growth. And the next one is, nothing in this life we own. Everything when it comes to our clothes, the cars, the houses, none of us ever own that. We only borrow it for the time we have here on earth. Because once we pass away, it then get used by someone else, right? That's now theirs, or they get to enjoy those things. So if that's true, if we never own anything, while we're going through life, everything is borrowed, what is the one thing we do own? The one thing we do own is this moment in time. The experiences that we have, the memories that we have, the education that we have. Those are the things that we own. So be present in your day-to-day life, because honestly, that's the only thing you actually own, is those moments in time. You see, where I come from and where I'm at today, it's completely different, so drastically different that most people can't even comprehend or even see, that life of me. And that's because, again, I live by a principle, 1% better every day. Because if you live by that principle, you'll be unrecognizable to the people you once knew, because you're always improving yourself. For me, even though I have accomplished so much in my life at this point, there's, buckle up for the next 10 years, because what I have on the board, on my vision board to accomplish in the next 10 years is going to make these last 14 years look very, very insignificant. But I wouldn't say they wasn't, because these are the foundation building blocks that led to these next 10 years. Because without these last 14 years, I could never building myself and learning the philosophies and building the characteristics and building the habits, I could have never accomplished what I'm going to accomplish in these next 10 years. But I've built this person for the last 14 years. I've built the man who you see before you today. My whole thing in life is, I don't know if you see me post these things, but my entire life mission is to be impactful. So I leave you with that. I just want to leave the world. I want the world to be better because I was here. So I leave you with that. Provide massive value to others. If you wanted to know what are the gems that I've gotten or I've taken, you can take from my journey in life, here it is. In order for things to change, you must change. That's the first one. Second thing is, be a lifelong student. you're a lifelong student, you'll get different point of views and perspectives, which will make you more understanding, will make you wiser, and will make you a better human being. The third thing is provide massive value to other people. Because to have everything you want in this world, everything you want in this life, you must provide value to others. And if you do that, you will win at this game we call life. And the last and final thing is be kind. Everybody is doing the best they can with the resources and the knowledge that they have. So be more understanding. It's a little lens that you can see. I'll give you that lens so you can see the world through it. We're all doing the best we can with the knowledge we have and the resources that's at our disposal. So if we come from that place of understanding, or that view, or if we see it through that different viewpoint, we become more understanding for humans as we just kind of all just trying to figure it out. So those are the lessons that I'd like to leave you with. And like always, be impactful.